All right, let's talk about South Carolina's left tackle situation because Shane Beamer finally commented with specifics on what is going on with Jaylen Nichols and his knee injury that he suffered back in the spring game. We talked about this before on the show, trying to figure out whether or not he's going to miss part of the season or if he's actually going to be able to play starting in week 1 on September 2nd against North Carolina Tar Heels. And with Shane Beamer's clarification he provided on Tuesday, it seems that the news isn't great for Jaylen Nichols. Here were Shane Beamer's comments on Nichols' injury situation.
Jaylen specifically, as you guys saw in the spring game, suffered a pretty significant injury. He won't be ready for the beginning of the season. I'll say that, and optimistic that the recovery process will go well and we'll get him back. Hopefully, before the season is over. But he won't be ready to start the season.
Now, obviously, this is not good news for South Carolina's offensive unit, considering the fact that Jaylen Nichols was the Gamecocks' most seasoned offensive lineman heading into this year, with all the game appearances and starts he has under his belt from his time as an SEC offensive lineman. And with what Shane Beamer said at his press conference on Tuesday evening, it seems like even if Jaylen Nichols was to come back in the middle of the season, that he probably wouldn't be starting for South Carolina, because that would be a very tough ask of a guy to be out for that long, rehabbing from an injury, a lower body injury nonetheless, as an offensive lineman, and then thrust him into the starting lineup halfway through the season, going up against SEC level competition. So we need to talk about guys now that could fill in that role this next year. And I've got a couple candidates that I'm going to talk about here, starting off with Jakai Moore. Now, there's a couple reasons why I think Jakai Moore playing left tackle makes sense here. First of all, Jakai Moore has experience here at the position. He has played in 20 games at that left tackle spot and made 12 overall starts in his career there. And the other thing is, Jakai Moore doesn't just have experience at left tackle, but he's got experience in this offense. An offense that for the last couple of years has been filled with pro-style concepts, which is now continuing under new offensive coordinator Dal Loggins. So Jakai Moore is not a guy that is drinking water from a fire hose, so to speak, and trying to digest the entire offense itself while also trying to digest maybe new responsibilities at left tackle, like another guy I'll talk about in a little bit. So he's got the experience, and in my opinion, he's a guy that would be able to handle the pressure of being put at left tackle should this move take place. Now, admittedly, there's also an argument to be made why Jakai Moore should not play left tackle. And the first reason is, while Jakai Moore has played a lot at left tackle, he's been inconsistent at best in terms of his pass protection, as according to Pro Football Focus, in 396 pass blocking snaps at left tackle, Jakai Moore has a pass blocking grade of 51.91, which is a below average grade based on Pro Football Focus's overall grade scale. Obviously, not something that you want on your SEC offensive line with the athletes and the talent you're going to be facing week in and week out. The other thing is, Jakai Moore showed some promise at left guard late last year, as he had an 80 pass blocking grade on 155 pass blocking snaps in the final 3 games against Tennessee, Clemson, and Notre Dame, all games that Jakai Moore started. So he might be a better fit actually at a different position. But either way, I think that Jakai Moore, with the experience he has, both in the scheme, the type of scheme that we're running, and also the experience at the position, he's still the best candidate to play left tackle. Now, the second best candidate to play the left tackle position for South Carolina, in my opinion, is Nick Gargiulo. And once again, a couple reasons why he could be the best candidate and maybe wouldn't be the best candidate. To start off with the positives here, Nick Gargiulo has played the position before, and he's played it at a high level, as when he played left tackle back in his time at Yale, he had an overall pass blocking grade of 80.8 and a run blocking grade of 68.9 in 995 career snaps at that position, according to Pro Football Focus. And the other thing is this, Gargiulo has been heralded as sort of the leader of the group, the guy that has sort of taken the mantle of being, again, the quote-unquote tone setter for the position unit. And you need a guy like that, obviously, with your offensive line every single year. And if Nick Gargiulo is that kind of guy, then you might want him to play one of the most important spots for you on the offensive line, which is that left tackle position. Now, there's also a couple reasons why this move would not make as much sense. Firstly, while Nick Gargiulo did quite good in terms of pass blocking when he was playing for the Yale Bulldogs a couple years back, Nick Gargiulo was facing Ivy League athletes. And we all know Ivy League athletes are not the same as SEC athletes. So, admittedly, there's no way of knowing how Nick Gargiulo would be able to handle the speed coming off the edge in the SEC week in and week out if he were to play that left tackle spot. We have to be fair about that. Here's the other thing. As far as I know, and as far as what's been reported overall, Nick Gargiulo was taking reps on the interior offensive line throughout all of spring practice. So, if you go into fall camp and you move Nick Gargiulo to left tackle, that is a new set of responsibilities and probably some different terminology that now you are thrusting upon him to learn pretty much within a month's time before you got to go play a decent week one opponent in the North Carolina Tar Heels. Now, again, he's a veteran offensive lineman, so maybe that kind of move would not take him completely off guard like it would a younger player, but still, that would be a bit of a learning curve probably for Nick Gargiulo to go back to left tackle under a new coaching staff and on a new football team facing much better competition than he did when he was with Yale. The final candidate to play left tackle for this season might surprise some of you, but I got Marquis Anderson listed here as that third candidate. Now, a couple of reasons why this move would make sense. Marquis Anderson has by far the highest ceiling out of all the players I have listed to this point, and maybe the highest ceiling out of all the offensive linemen that are currently on South Carolina's roster. So, Marquis Anderson's got the talent, and he's got the potential. He also repped at left tackle in the spring. So this would not be a massive positional transition for the young true freshman. And he's been noted for being able to absorb information like a sponge, according to offensive line coach Lonnie Teasley, a guy that you do not have to tell too many times a certain concept or a term before he gets it and he has it nailed down. That's a good quality to have for an offensive lineman. Now, the reason why this would not make sense is quite obvious here. Marquis Anderson has never played a snap in a college football game. He is a true freshman. And obviously, I've talked about this before, it is not easy for true freshmen to break the starting lineup and be able to handle this kind of strain and responsibility on the offensive line, especially in the SEC. And we saw it in the spring game. Obviously, you can't take a whole lot away from it being his first ever, unofficial game in front of fans. But Elijah Davis and Brian Thomas Jr., they had their way with Marquis Anderson in pass protection while he was at left tackle. Now, again, I think it says a lot that he got put there in the first place by this coaching staff. And clearly, he is a true freshman. And he actually should still be in high school right now. So, he's got plenty of time to develop. You should not make any long-term judgments based off of the spring game alone. But obviously, if he were to play left tackle in year one, you would probably be having a lot of either hits or really big whiffs on every given play throughout an entire football game.